In 1885, Van Gogh wrote to his brother Theo, "I've tried to show that these people, eating their potatoes by the light of their lamp, have dug the earth with the very hands they now place in the dish. That's why I hope it will appeal to no one." That's how Vincent spoke about the painting he had worked on more than any other up to that point. He spent months sketching, studying heads, practicing light and composition. And when he finally finished it, he believed he had created his first masterpiece. But that's not what others thought. Critics tore it apart. They pointed out every mistake. Even his own brother had doubts. And still, Van Gogh defended that painting until the end of his life. To him, The Potato Eaters was more important than any other painting he ever made. What drove him to paint such a dark scene? Who were the people gathered around that table? And how did this painting, so misunderstood at the time, become the first step toward everything Van Gogh would later become? In 1885, Van Gogh was 32 years old and living in Nuenen, a small village in the south of the Netherlands. He wasn't yet the artist we all know today. He had no fame, no sales, not even a recognizable style, but he had one clear idea in his mind. He didn't want to paint beautiful things. He wasn't interested in elegant flowers or idyllic landscapes like the ones that were popular in Paris. What obsessed him at that time was capturing real life, the life of peasants, of the poor, those who spent entire days working the land under the rain, the sun, or the cold, only to end the day with barely enough to fill a plate. That fascination with rural life didn't come out of nowhere. Van Gogh deeply admired Jean-François Millet, a French painter who portrayed scenes of the countryside with almost spiritual sensitivity. Millet had painted peasants not as background figures, but as protagonists. And that's what inspired Vincent. He wanted to do the same, but in his own way, rawer, more direct, and more human. In Nuenen, Van Gogh found the perfect setting to do it. Surrounded by farms, shepherds, and laborers, he began spending time with them. He entered their homes, sat in their kitchens, watched them eat, talk, and rest. And he didn't do it like a curious outsider. He himself lived in poverty, with no luxuries, no heating, and barely any money. His brother Theo, who lived in Paris and worked as an art dealer, supported him financially each month. And in return, Vincent sent him letters, lots of letters. In them, he shared not only the events of his daily life, but also the emotions behind each painting. In one of those letters, he wrote something that perfectly sums up what he was aiming for with his art at the time. "I wanted to show a life completely different from ours, of civilized people. Van Gogh wanted his paintings to have dirt under their fingernails, to smell like labor, like soil, like truth, and The Potato Eaters was going to be the embodiment of all of that." Van Gogh had a very clear goal when he began working on this painting. He wanted to prove what he was capable of. He literally called it his showpiece. This wasn't just another painting, it was his first serious attempt to create something big, something that truly represented him as an artist. Most painters at the time tried to impress with mythological themes, refined portraits, or sunlit landscapes, but Van Gogh chose the opposite path. He decided to paint 5 poor peasants sitting around a table, eating boiled potatoes. It was a bold choice for the time. But to him, that scene had a power no elegant subject could match. What Van Gogh wanted was to show life as it really was. He wanted you to see the weariness in their eyes, to notice that the same hands lifting food to their mouths were the ones that had dug the earth all day long. In one of his letters to Theo, he wrote, "I wanted it to have the feel of having been cooked with the same soil that was cultivated, the color of an unpeeled potato." Van Gogh didn't improvise anything in this painting. Even though many people associate his art with spontaneity or the chaos of a tormented genius, The Potato Eaters was the result of meticulous, obsessive, and deeply planned work. Before even touching the final canvas, Van Gogh spent months preparing. He created over 100 sketches and studies, many of them focused solely on peasant heads. He studied their features, their expressions, how the light fell on their faces as they talked or ate. He drew hands, bonnets, hats, bodies sitting on rustic benches, everything he might need. His main models were a real peasant family, the de Groots, who lived near him in Nuenen. He knew them well. He would sit in their kitchen, talk to them, observe how they lived. The young woman in the painting, for instance, was Godina de Groot, and Van Gogh portrayed her in several earlier sketches. And he didn't just prepare by drawing. He also painted earlier versions of the composition. He tested different arrangements, experimented with where to place each figure, and worked on making everything revolve around that hanging lamp in the center. He even made a full lithograph of the painting, drawn entirely from memory in a single day. When he finished it, he had about 20 copies printed and sent them to friends as a kind of preview of the painting to come. But the most interesting part is this. Van Gogh knew the painting had flaws, and he didn't care. In fact, he said he didn't want it to be perfect. He wasn't interested in exact anatomy or academic proportions. What he wanted was something much harder, to make the figures feel alive, to convey a mood, a feeling. In one of his letters he wrote, "I would despair if my figures were academically correct. What I want is for them to have something to say with gesture, with expression, even if they're badly drawn." And you can see it throughout the painting. The hands are too large, the faces are harsh, the bodies almost look shrunken. But instead of weakening the image, that's exactly what makes the potato eaters feel so genuine. Now let's take a look at the scene. Imagine standing in front of the painting, inside that small dark dining room with the smell of boiled potatoes lingering in the air. 5 peasants sit around a wooden table. They're not smiling, they're not chatting. They're focused on something far more essential, eating. What's on the table is simple, a dish of potatoes and a jug of coffee. Everything revolves around a single oil lamp hanging at the center. That yellow light is the only source of illumination in the scene. There are no windows, no sunsets, no blue skies, just that lamp. And what's interesting is how Van Gogh uses it. It doesn't light everyone evenly. Instead, it casts sharp shadows, cuts across faces, and leaves the corners in darkness. The colors are earthy, browns, muted greens, ochres. But even though it might look dirty or grey at first glance, Van Gogh actually used a very rich palette. He mixed complementary colors, like red and green or blue and orange, to create those broken, imperfect tones. This technique is called broken color harmony, and it gives the painting that organic feel, as if it were painted with the same soil the peasants work in. The woman on the left is pouring coffee, and that's symbolic too. In the Netherlands, coffee was what people drank after a hard day in the fields. It was the only luxury they could afford. There's no wine, no feast, just potatoes and coffee, and that's everything. And if you look closely at the back wall, you'll see a small painting hanging there. It's a religious image, as if Van Gogh were telling us that even this humble scene carries something sacred. In fact, many have compared the potato eaters to a kind of peasant Last Supper. No apostles, no bread or wine, just potatoes, a single lamp, and 5 souls sharing what little they have. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to keep learning about art history every week. And if you'd like to support the channel and have this artwork in your home, you can purchase a reproduction through the link in the description. On our website, you'll find over 600 historical paintings like this one, ready for you to choose your favorite and start your lifelong collection. Shipping is free worldwide, and with every purchase, you're not only getting a unique piece, you're helping me continue creating content like this. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.